Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is May. I am so glad to be here with you all. This is Memorial Day in America, and it is a day where we remember our fallen. I can't even remember what I'm remembering. Which brings us to the topic of today's show, which is sex and the brain. If you are a regular listener, today I have a treat for you. My friend Ann Betts is back. If you remember her, she was in a couple of my previous shows. One is called Sex Stories, where we read the stories that we wrote about sex, and different authors who came on. And Anne is a beautiful writer, both poetry and stories. So she read a couple of her pieces, and then we also did the New Year resolution show to create resolution for your sex, and she also read some of her sexy poems there too. And today she's back, even sexier, because she is going to be really smart. And I find smart people a huge turn on. It's like an aphrodisiac for me, like a brain masturbation. And to talk about the brain and all the stuff that she's been researching on how the brain works and how it impacts our sex, and vice versa, how our sex impacts the brain, why we do what we do, why we feel what we do, what we feel, and so on and so forth. And but before we dive in, I have to reiterate the format of my show. I don't know if you guys realize this, but I do not interview experts on my show. I like to have conversations with regular people about sex, about what we're learning, what we're experiencing, what interests us, what our relationships are like. And from that, we learn together, and we tell stories, and we make our own learning, because I think that's a much more empowering way to grow ourselves, especially around our sex, because we're just surrounded. We're in the world of experts, people telling us what to do, and all the shoulds and everything, and then we walk around like a self-help book, I should do this, I should do that, but we don't. So why not? Well, because we're not our own teachers. So that's what my show is about. It's just everyday conversations that I have with my friends, kind of like in the kitchen, that we hang together and we collectively learn from each other. So, Anne, welcome back to the show, honey.
Thank you, sweetie, and I love just sitting over here giggling. I don't know if you could hear me at your intro, because I just love that. And one of the things I love about it is that it just gives me so much permission, because I am not a sex researcher by any means, and I just am, as some people know, I'm just an ordinary person who became really, really fascinated and passionate about neuroscience. And so that's becoming what I do as a coach and as a leader. And so I just thought, I said to May at one point, we need to talk about neuroscience and sex, not like I really know anything about it. So we decided we'll, talk about some stuff today, and we might make some shit up too. So.
Well, I hope so, and declare it. And
exactly. Go ahead.
I think that's what's so important nowadays, too, is like we're different kind of learners now, like when you said that to me about 2 months ago, it was just like a whim, right? And then we're like, okay, great, let's book it. And in 2 months, you're now, quote unquote, between the two of us, you're the expert on brain and sex. I love it. So, Ed, tell us something. Like, here's my first question. I love it.
Yeah, just ask me anything. Let's just be random.
My first question is, so Ed, why does wearing lingerie get us hot? What does the brain have to do with that?
I love that. I love that, because this was a question that I had. I realized that I love wearing lingerie. I really do. And it's I think it works on a couple of different levels. So I thought, what's going on in my brain if I'm wearing the lingerie, and it's really, I sleep mostly with men, and so, it's turning the man on in this case. What is that? Because I'm wanting to stimulate him, But why is it that when I put on my sexy, black, tight, lacy thing, I'm having a reaction? And I thought, this is really interesting. So here's what I think it is. I think there's a couple of things. One is that one of the main chemicals that's involved with any sort of pleasurable behavior is a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is what gets triggered with cocaine and alcohol. Most drugs are all about giving you pleasure. So you get a pleasure hit from dopamine. And sex is a great source of dopamine. And one of the ways that dopamine works is not just like if I'm going to eat some chocolate, if that's pleasurable to me. It starts even before I've put the chocolate in my mouth. So I see the chocolate bar, and my dopamine release is already starting just a little bit to give me some motivation to eat the chocolate.
I'm sitting here. Honey, my mouth is already salivating, so my dopamine is releasing. I was hearing you talk about the chocolate bar. I'm all like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, so my brain just went to, dopamine, pleasure, mouth watering, saliva, and it's like cocaine and alcohol. Therefore, dopamine, lacy black underwear is a cheap form of cocaine. There you go.
What I think is interesting about this is that it's not just the act of sex, but it's what I'm associating with it that's giving me some anticipatory pleasure. It's like my body is saying, oh, lingerie means sex, and that's a really full blast of dopamine. That means I'm going to give you a little bit now because that's going to get you kind of into the game where you get more. Does that make sense?
Right. And that's even the way you said it was so pleasurable, anticipatory pleasure. I think that's like 90% of the game, isn't it?
Getting into, I've got some other really interesting stuff about just kind of getting in the mood. Like what is that and how does that work? I think that's just a whole other huge area of discussion. But that's the other piece I wanted to say about you really were modeling it well. And it also has to do with another part of our brain I think is really interesting on many levels, and it's something called mirror neurons. Mirror like you look in the mirror. And so when I was talking about chocolate, your mouth was watering, right?
Right. I'm a dog.
We all are, though. Well, this gets into a really interesting part of the brain, which is why are we having a physical reaction to something that's mental?
My brain just leapt right to, that's why lacy underwear. That's why you want to, because I'm leaping too fast. Keep going, Ann.
No, keep going. Where did you go? I love that.
Well, so that's the whole game of sex, isn't it? So it's smoke and mirror. Mirror, neuron. Anyway, smoke and mirror, right? That's why sex, and we're prettier and sexier at night, and with makeup and with the right lighting and the right, bouquet.
How do we involve, I don't know who said this. I want to say Woody Allen. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't him. It sounds like something he would say. But your brain is your biggest sex organ.
Right. That's right. And, So sometimes I have to say that sometimes I wonder about my work with this show and the bigger body of work of Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, because I want to bring consciousness into our sex and busting up lies and all that stuff, but in some way it's kind of like, well, I might be mystifying sex, and then that way it's no longer, exciting and mysterious, so then people wouldn't want, it would just be like work. Work.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting area of sort of for me it's my whole fascination with the brain is in the field of consciousness. And this is like this place of, wow, if we get where we understand everything, do we lose some magic? I actually think we increase the magic, because I don't really have the best way to say this, but it's like the more that we know, and I know you stand for this, the more empowered we are. Therefore, the more we can create. So when you know, like, this sort of leads to this other thing that I think is really cool about sex, which is
wait, before you go there, that was really touching. I almost cried when hearing you said that. Because, yes, I do have that fear of, like, God, is this why for centuries we kept sex as mysterious and all this stuff? And if we pull back the cover, it's no longer sexy and we can't sell, which is really a big fear talking. And the way you said that, like, if we understand everything, the fear is if we understand everything, then we lose the magic. But what you're saying is that, no, the more we understand it, the more we can go with it. We can expand. We can take it to the next level. And we can have deeper relationship, even beyond the smoke and mirror games that we play with each other, that we've done to ourselves, the illusions and all that pain. And so my heart just kind of felt really moved and open, and I was like, oh, that's where we're going, man.
Thank you. Thank you for slowing me down. That's my main edge is I get so excited. I just want to pack everything in, and I love that you stopped. Because while you were doing that, an image came to me. I think it's like saying if you're an artist and you've only ever had 3 colors, red, red, blue, and yellow maybe you've had, and you can work really hard, but when you imagine that you get another color and another color and another color, and then what can you create? And I think our understanding of, our own response and our own ability to connect with another person, all of that, if it's a true understanding like in the heart, it just gives us more that we can paint with.
Yeah. Thank you. So give us another piece, Anne, so we can paint more with it.
Well, I want to build on the piece about the lingerie and the chocolate. And I want to talk a little more about, this, the other thing I think is really fun, which is that I noticed, I'm just my own sex researcher, and luckily I have a wonderful, wonderful new man in my life to play with, so it's been great.
It's gotten there already? I thought this was new. Good for you
May, how well do you know me? Good Lord.
Good Lord. This is like, wait a minute, did we approve? Are you allowed to have sex yet?
Oh, dear, now I'm getting all red. Well, one of the things, I'm just going to go on to the science now. One of the things that I notice is that when I am with and I notice this in both directions, that if I am really aroused, it's arousing for the man I'm with.
Yes.
And if he's aroused, it's arousing for me. And I don't know that there's any research on this, or I didn't, there may be, but I don't know for sure. But I think that that's part of that mirror neuron system. And how that works is that we feel both what we're fascinatingly complex. And so if you do something like eat chocolate, you have a certain response, right? And if I tell you about eating chocolate, you actually had like a physiological response. Your mouth watered, and you're imagining eating the chocolate. And the brain doesn't really know the difference between the two. It's doing very, very similar things. The same neurons are firing if you're eating chocolate, if you're imagining eating chocolate, if you're watching me eat chocolate, or if you're remembering eating chocolate.
How cool. So then we can just trick ourselves and not have to eat chocolate and still have the pleasure.
Well, and think about it, sweetie. We do it all the time. What do you think a fantasy is?
Right. And
our body is having a physical response, even if we're not touching ourselves, which is a fascinating thing. It's like, how turned on can I get without touching myself? Well, then your brain's your biggest sex organ, right?
Yeah, I'm feeling quite turned on right now, actually. Talking about this, I'm all like, woo, okay.
Yeah, and you haven't even heard me talk about eating a mango if you really want to get turned on.
You talk about eating a mango. What is it? How eating a mango has anything to do with the brain and sex, man?
Oh, I think it's very, it's very similar to the chocolate thing. But if if I describe to you, and maybe our listeners can play along, and this is an interesting thing too, because it illustrates a point about fantasies. So if I say, I had a mango for lunch today, and it was juicy and luscious and very firm, but also soft. And when I cut into it, some of the juice ran down my wrist, and I licked the juice off my wrist. And then I took this beautiful, soft, perfect, juicy piece of mango, and I bit into it, and it was like the sunshine was exploding in my mouth.
Mm.
So your mouth is maybe watering?
Well, it makes me want you to keep going, and then what does your tongue do? My tongue started wanting you to swirl it around that flesh of that ripe mango, and just and I could actually feel the texture of the mango and my tongue just from what you said.
And then as you are describing it, what I'm aware of is I'm actually imagining the texture of the flesh of the mango because you said that.
Yeah.
So this is all our... Go ahead.
This makes me think it's so important that we develop the skill of talking dirty with each other. It all just makes sense now. I'm so convinced. That is one thing that I have such a hard time with, talking dirty to my man or I want to lick your balls. It's just kind of I'm not quite there as I am with the mango.
Well, you could see whether the mango would do it for him in the right tone of voice. But what you're doing is you're firing, you're actually helping those sex response neural pathways fire, I believe, by describing this. And so that's why you get turned on. And I think even the words, like when I'm talking about the mango and I say words like firm, luscious, juicy, all of those we associate with sex, and that's why to some people, if I describe eating a mango, they will get turned on.
It's like I want both at the moment. I want to eat a mango and fuck.
While I'm eating a mango. Exactly.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly. Now, I have to say I want to make another point about the whole mango thing because I think this is just fascinating. I was talking about eating a mango. In a class that I was teaching, I wasn't doing it quite as sexily, but I was just using it to illustrate the idea of mirror neurons. And
I think you should. You're going to get much more clients, and they'll pay attention to you. I think sex is underrated. Being sexy as a teacher is underrated. I think we should use it all the way to our advantage, because
I love that.
That's how we're going to get who can compete with sex.
That's, you're absolutely right. I love that. Well, here was the funny thing. Most of the class was like their mouths were watering. Somebody did say they got turned on. It was a very open class. But one person said, what was interesting for me is nothing happened because I don't like mangoes.
Oh.
Which right. I loved. I loved that because it shows, we're only triggering our own response. This is why I think it's also really important in sex to it's part of the having more colors to paint with. Well, we need to know, what our partner's mango hot spots are. They're what their mango spots are and what they're not. And so you could put all of this effort into describing something that's going to turn you on, but it's not triggering the right neural pathways in their brain. So if you might have a fantasy about being dominant, but if you're with a partner who also prefers being dominant and you start talking about dominating them, it may be as really hot and sexy, but not to them. Which, we know this, right?
Right. Right. Or it'd be hot and sexy for them, but then they'll turn somewhere else to go get it because you're not giving that to them.
Right. They don't want to be dominated by you. The idea of domination may turn them on, but it's not with you. Yeah. Yes, I could definitely see that.
Fascinating. So what is the chemical cycle of sex?
The chemical cycle of sex. Oh dear. Well, there's something really interesting about one of the things that happens that people don't know a lot about and I'm not a real expert on, but I find it quite interesting, is how one of the things that happens after orgasm, we release, you get a lot of dopamine, you get serotonin and other happiness drugs, so you get this like bang, fireworks of these amazing pleasure chemicals in your brain, right? We that's orgasm. Like, man, it just releases, boom, like that. I was reading a book about addiction, and this was really interesting. Someone said taking methamphetamine for her was like the most intensive brain orgasm she'd ever had.
Wow.
So it's it's drugs. It's all, we're all pleasure is sort of stimulating some sort of reward drug in our brain. That's why we seek out sex again, if we're healthy. But one of the other things that happens is that after orgasm, more quickly for men than for women, another chemical gets released called prolactin. This is have you ever heard of this, May?
No.
Okay, this I learned from the Tantra. The people who study Tantra, a lot of them know about this, and that's where I learned it. They've got a lot of really cool wisdom about the body's physiology and sex. What prolactin does is it actually makes you withdraw. So, the classic, like, have you ever been to bed with a man where, you're, like, so close and you're cuddling and you're, like, into it and it's wonderful, and then you have an orgasm and he's, like, putting his shorts on?
Yep. Like, I'm done. Now I'm hungry. Let's go eat something.
Okay, honey, got a sports game. See you later. You're laying there on the bed, like, quivering. He's out the door.
And to be honest, that also, the reverse is also true for me. I could be very male-like. I could just, like, all hot and heavy and all that stuff, and when I'm done, it's like, okay, I'm done. I got a big old long list of things to do. Let's get on it.
Yep, let's go. And this is partially part of the chemical response is prolactin, because what prolactin does, I think if you think about this, like from an evolutionary standpoint and why it makes sense, and anytime I'm trying to figure out the brain, my go-to connection is why would this have been good for us at some point in our history? Well, if we just fucked all the time, we'd never get anything done. Right? You never get to your big old to-do list. So prolactin comes online to make us less interested in our mate so that we can get on with life and rearing the children. And it actually can have this impact, and then I'll tell you what moderates it. It can have this impact of that we actually see them as less attractive than we did.
Wow.
It can really like push people away.
Everything.
I know. When I read about that, I thought this explains my whole sexual history.
Well, yeah, and oh my God, I don't know. It's just like I think a lot of important decisions were made based on that thing, right? It's like, oh, I had sex with him, and now I looked at him, and he's disgusting. I can just imagine women, men who made decisions from that going, okay, I don't know why I keep coming back here to have sex with this person. They're just really disgusting afterwards, right? And that it's just a drug that got released in your brain.
Right, and it can take like a week. It can take a week to 2 weeks for the prolactin to diminish. God. I know. I'm not an expert on this, so it's just like really intrigues me. One of the things that moderates the impact of prolactin is oxytocin, which also gets released during, they call it the cuddle hormone, because it makes you just want to be close. It's released by being close, and it makes you want to be close and trust. So if your relationship is intimate and truly intimate and connected, you're building oxytocin, so you're telling each other your secrets, you're cuddling a lot, you're putting a lot of care and feeding into the relationship. The prolactin effect will be much less because the oxytocin will override it, which is why, couples it's why we can stay together as couples when we really do care about each other, and why one-night stands are often just stay as one-night stands. I think. Does that make sense?
Well, tell me what you just saw there, the connection.
Well, I think if it's a one-night stand and I don't really care about the person, but I met him in a bar and, my God, was he hot. And I, go to bed with him, and he likes me too, and we go to bed with each other. We have an orgasm. The prolactin kicks in to kind of push us away, and there's no other connection there, or very little.
Right, especially if that person has a little bit of a depression and a tendency to not let people in, so that makes it harder to cuddle with them. Now, be released, and so it has me going. I am now thinking of a particular individual that I actually have that exact experience.
Yeah. I love that because I think that's the best way to understand things is to say, does this make sense? Like, can I map this onto some real experience? So what happened with that particular individual, if you don't mind?
Oh, that was a good story. Thanks for asking. So, it was in my heyday, and I was completely free and experimental about 5 years ago. And I was invited to Denver, to Colorado, and I met this cowboy, and we danced, and it was really hot. And then the next day he brought horses out and took us on a big ride, and he was just like that whole cowboy fantasy just played out.
Marlboro Man.
Well, yeah, and it was just like every girl, every woman gets to have a cowboy at least once in her life. That was mine.
Okay.
He was cute. He had the right cowboy gear on. He even had horses, and
nice.
We went on this ride all day, and then I cooked him a nice steak dinner afterward, and we had bonfire and all this wonderful stuff. And so then we went for a walk to look at the stars at night, and we made out in the field out there. Let's just put it this way: we quieted the cows down because they didn't know what that sound that was so strange to the land.
Wow.
Right. And so, and then because it was in the field, so we just went home, and that was fine. So there was no cuddling needed. And then after that, we kind of got together a couple more times, and there was very little cuddle too. And later on, it just kind of looked like he wasn't available. There was no cuddling happening. There's no oxytocin. I wanted to. It wasn't received. So my cuddle hormone didn't get released and didn't get prosperous. So anyway.
Yeah, I think and I think probably so many of us, male or female, have stories of like something that happened that seemed like it had great potential and then just, went astray. And I think there's brain stuff. I think we should, talk about the consciousness aspect of that as well, because that's really fascinating. But I do think it may have something to do with the prolactin response that happens right after sex, where if we're not bonded, it can push people apart so that they lose interest in each other, even when there's a lot of passion and intensity right away.
Yeah. And I did notice that too, like he didn't look quite as shiny of a cowboy like he did before that time, but I was willing to overlook that if we had more oxytocin going on.
Right. Well, and this goes to one of my other really good questions that I think is. I just like to look up what do I think is interesting, and one of them is, does love make us stupid?
I was just going to ask you that. You know what? We're going to go to a quick commercial, and then we'll come back and answer that question. Does love make us stupid?
Perfect. That'll bring everybody back.
Okay, good.
Is your marriage or relationship in crisis? Where one partner wants to expand into their sex and bring scary changes to the relationship, while the other partner is dug in, protective, and saying, no way in hell is this going to happen. May knows this place well, and she can help both sides. She is truly amazing. Learn more about her specialty, crisis coaching for couples and individuals, at sexliesandconsciousness.com.
My honey made me that commercial.
That is such
so hilarious.
I love that commercial. He's got such a nice voice too. That's just fabulous.
Well, he used to be a DJ on the radio, you know.
Yeah,
so
you can hear that.
I get to benefit from that.
Oh, you want to hear something funny? This was a statistic I found today about it takes us between 90 seconds and 4 minutes to be attracted to someone. And 55, this was my statistic, 55% of it is body language. 33% of it is the speed and the tone of their voice.
Wow.
And then only 7%, I know this only adds up to like 95%, I don't know what the rest of it is, but only 7% is what they actually say.
Wow.
So it's the subtle body language, it's the cues that we are taking in non-verbally that we're aware of. It's
do those numbers again, honey. And we're talking about sex, so my brain doesn't quite work very well. You know, it's still with...
You want me to give you the numbers again?
Yeah, so 90 seconds to be attracted to someone.
90 seconds to 4 minutes to be attracted to someone. We're really taking in information quickly, and I'll tell you a little bit about why that is. Then we will talk about why sex makes us stupid. 90 seconds to 4 minutes. It really shows you that speed dating could be very effective.
That's right, yeah.
And 55% of what we're responding to is body language. 33% is speed and tone of voice. And only about 7% is what the person's actually telling us.
That totally resonates. It's true to me. I mean, right? Somebody walk into the door, you look at that person, and already you have an opinion. You have, or So on, right? And you didn't even have to say a darn thing. And then it's like, and then when with his action or his movement or something, it's all, you know, you're tracking him. And then whatever he has to say, it just really is the final thing on top. It's like, oh, no, that's exactly what I thought that you would do. Or, wow, that's surprising. You know, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's just fascinating to me. I think you're absolutely right. And what I think this has to do with is, bigger issues around that we're kind of picking up on. Maybe we should, I feel really random because I want to answer this question about does sex make us stupid, but what this is making me think of is this whole question that you and I were talking about before the show about soulmates.
Yeah.
So should we just be really random and just go there? And
absolutely. Make them wait.
Okay. Well, I think what's happening is that we're, so there's a fascinating group called the HeartMath Institute, and they study the brain that actually lives in our heart. And what they'll tell you, if you look them up, HeartMath Institute, they're just phenomenal. What they have found is that the heart's electromagnetic field is 100 times greater than that of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
They've also found, say that again?
And why does that matter?
Well, because they've got some really interesting research. They're very cutting edge. They're very devoted to doing things in a critically well done scientific way. But what they're measuring are things that are very out there on the edge of what we can measure. So one of the things they've been able to measure is, and I don't know, I can't tell you the experiment because I didn't totally follow it. But basically, the heart knows first, sends information to the brain. The brain then tells the body what to do. The heart knows first. The heart knows immediately, and there's even evidence that basically says, the heart kind of knows before something happens.
I think there's a lot of different organizations now springing up for that. I keep hearing about these things, like how our brain is our body and the skin on our body and all that stuff is a much bigger brain than just our little brain on our top of our head. And what you say there is it's kind of like it's intuitive to me. You know, it's like it's one of those things when you say stuff, my heart. Oh, there we go. Interesting. My heart resonates, and I can just feel the depth of it, and then my whole body just relaxes into it, and then my brain goes, oh, I think that was something important there.
Right, exactly. exactly. It's like, so I think when we meet someone, and this kind of goes to the soulmate, what I am coming more and more to believe is that what we're picking up on is their level of consciousness, and we know that. And it's not really through what the person says. It's through all of these things that we understand in our heart that our brain doesn't really know how to quantify. And so we look to quantify them. We say, tell me about your new boyfriend. Well, he's really handsome, and he's, really smart, and he does this and that, and that's why I love him. Bullshit. That's not why you love him. You don't know why you love him.
Well, God, there's so many answers to this one. There's that piece, right? And then there's also the David Data's work on soulmate, how he's saying is that when we think of soulmate, we think that's the one, like that random needle in a haystack that you found and that you spend your whole life looking for that and all that stuff. And basically what I got from reading David Data's work is that just means that person represents something that you either had or didn't have in your childhood, and now you want to recreate that or run away from that. And
I think that's brilliant. Say that again. That's just brilliant.
Well, according to David Data in the book Intimate Communion, I rarely quote books, but that one was so right into my core. A soulmate is just simply someone who represents something in your childhood that either you had or didn't have that you're trying to recreate.
What makes so much sense to me about that when I think about this whole soulmate idea is that this is a little scary. Our earliest associations of love are from our earliest primary caretaker, and that's pretty much, nobody's really going to. People can deny that, but the research is pretty strong on that. So however they were with you is what you assume love is.
Yep.
If they were fearful with you, if they were a fearful, nervous person, you associate love with that. If they were rejecting, you associate love with rejection. And when someone doesn't reject you, it doesn't feel like love.
Yeah.
Because that's where those neural pathways go. And so the job of a conscious human being is to be aware. Like, I'm a little bit aware. I have a really great relationship with my dad. He's a wonderful man, but he was a little bit unavailable for me when I was young. He was a little bit preoccupied with his own life, and my parents had an open marriage, and so it was kind of an interesting way to grow up. So there is a little bit in me where if a man is a little hard to get, that's a little more exciting.
Yeah.
And as a conscious human being, my job is to be really aware of that, be present to it, and choose rather than let it run me.
Well, and I remember, like with my dad, I remember this one time where I did something at school that really disappointed him, and I remember, and even in that moment, noticing that. I was about 10 or 9 or something like that, and I failed at school on some big subject or whatever, and I cheat and lie about it. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm so disappointed in you." And I remember the fall of that sensation of like being disappointed in my dad's eyes so much that he had to look away from me. And then the earning love, the climbing back up to earn his love back and earn his respect back was such a high for me that for a long time as an adult, that's how I did love. I always set situation up so that I could feel like I need to earn love.
Perfect, because that then feels really comfortable. It's the neural pathway that's comfortable. It's the it's the path.
What's been built in my brain, right?
Right, exactly. It's like the path through the forest that you can easily walk down. And to do a new path, you have to hack through I've been cleaning my garden, so this is my metaphor for the day. Like, to do a new path, you got to hack through the underbrush, and maybe it grows back, and you have to do it again and again and again until there's a new path that says, I deserve to be loved.
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you the second part to that story. So I had all these relationships that way, right? Until finally with my current boyfriend, who, when I finally surrendered to this relationship, I actually had an honest conversation with myself and then with him to say, you know what, I really get there's a lot of reason why I want to be here, but the big one right now that I'm working through is that I never got to be the princess in my daddy's eyes. And in your eyes, I feel like a princess, and you treat me like a princess. And so if that's okay with you, that is one of the main reasons why I'm here, that I'm staying with you, is to heal that part and that I will allow you to treat me like a princess. I will fully receive that and appreciate that, you know, and to allow myself to heal that. And it was so clean and clear for me with myself and me with my honey, you know. And so it was just really beautiful. It was like creating a new pathway in my brain and how to be in the world.
That's beautiful. I love that you had a really conscious conversation about that, and because it also brings, you know, makes it like what it is, this beautiful spiritual teaching. I don't know where it originally comes from, but it's the phrase, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, what we resist persists.
Mhm. Yeah.
So when you say, I'm not going to resist being a princess.
Yeah.
It's easier for the brain to go with yes than it is to go with no.
Interesting. What happens to the brain when it's a yes or no?
Well, it's easier to go with it's like it's easier to go forward than to go backward. And so what you have to do, and this sort of comes to the question about like what happens when we lie. So let's see, what do I want to say about this? The brain, it kind of likes to take the easy way, and so if you're going to say no, you actually have to stop something, and you have to bring in it.
Like if somebody proposed sex to you, I mean, like the amount of effort to deny my sex or to deny having sex with someone is a lot more than if I just say, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, if you want to. Now, of course, you know, the same would be true if you didn't want to and you're trying to talk yourself into it, because then you're trying to inhibit your natural no response, right?
That's right, yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
So
and
interesting.
It wears the brain down. It actually, what's really interesting is that every decision that we make, it's like if you think of the brain running like a car, every decision we make is like going a mile in the car, and you use some gasoline. So you use, in your brain, you use glucose. And it takes more glucose to say no than it does to say yes, than it does to just go, like it takes more glucose to turn the car around than it does to just keep going down the hill.
I see.
So if going down the hill is like, yeah, I'm turned on, I'm excited, you know, let's just do it, that'll be easier than putting the brakes on.
That's how come a lot of babies are made.
Right, that's right.
Unwanted children, because glucose. We'll blame it on one word, glucose.
Right, because my brain is worn out now and I can't. Well, this is why sometimes too, you know, the you know, when someone asks again and again and again, it literally does wear us down. Like a little kid, mommy, can I? And to actually have to say no, 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 it wears us down. And then it's just like, whatever.
It's easy. Oh, and that's why men develop such a great skill around that. They're really good with saying, do you want sex? No? Okay, that's not, to them it's like, that means not yet. And then they come back, like, do you want sex today? No. How about just get together? No. Okay. Well, that's all right. And then how about if we eat, you know, have a meal together? No. Okay, how about just coffee? And then
I know, you're so right. You're so right. You're right. That's exactly right. At some point you'll get worn down. It's just too much work. Oh God. The funny thing is, and Well, and I haven't really thought about this in terms of sex, but in terms of decision making, they did this interesting study of Israeli judges where they had them, they looked to see when they were most likely to accept like creative sentencing ideas. Like give the guy probation instead of sentencing him. And they were most likely to be open to new ideas in sentencing right after lunch because they got their glucose replenished.
Wow. So the brain is just like in that yummy low place or something, and then it's like, oh, sure, why not?
It's like you can make a more difficult decision. You can analyze better. You can be more open when you're well fueled. So if you think about, May, I know you lead workshops, as do I, or even in coaching. Think about how many micro decisions you have to make when you're teaching.
Right. Yep.
And I learned this, and I thought, okay, I would often run on adrenaline, and I wouldn't eat at lunchtime because I'd be talking to participants. I'd be so excited.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, my ability to really be creative was not as high. And so I started eating mini meals because I knew all of these decisions that I'm making are like running down my gas tank.
Wow. Well, and that's kind of like that with vacation too, then.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I'm feeling that right now. Because I truly can feel it's. What are we almost June? Yeah, and my brain just feels so tired. It needs a rest. It needs some glucose, some fuel, and I am not. It's not functioning as efficient as I know it can be. Yeah,
that's a whole other really fascinating area, which is how do we have our brains work really well? And this will kind of maybe leads us back to this thing about does love make us stupid? And it does. I looked this up. I just thought it feels like it does sometimes, so let's look it up. So what I found was that when we're in love, we actually there's a judgment and like a discernment network in the brain. Especially when we make sort of a social judgments about a person. Yeah. And when we are in love, whether it's with our children or with a lover, that deactivates. It shuts down. They kind of get it, that kind of social judgment thing sort of shuts off. So that's why, like, you ever have a girlfriend who is just lovely and amazing and talented, and they show up with a really loser guy who's kind of socially inept? You're like, how could she do that? Well, those circuits in the brain, when we fall in love, don't work anymore or don't work as well. That's why I don't really trust the whole in love place. Oh, I don't trust about that. Yeah, I don't trust the whole I'm in love. I don't trust the decisions that I make from being I'm in love. I don't trust that I'm in love is nirvana, is the place that I need to arrive to. I'm really suspicious of myself when I'm in love, and I'm actually like trying and wanting to move away from that. Wanting to move away from the suspicious of yourself? No, from making decisions based on I'm in love. Yeah, no, I think that according to the research, I think that's really smart. I think it's really, really hard because, it's hard to be that conscious and aware and say, oh, I'm maybe not at my best right now. But I think it's true. It's true that we're not. Yeah, I've been walking around. See, I gave myself 3 years. In 3 years, I experimented about how I love. And so I just allowed myself to fall in love, meet as many men, and see what I do with no restriction, no boundary, and no, we need to find a man to get married, therefore we're on this track of thinking kind of thing, Right, and what I discovered in my own experiments is that it's like, wow, what I call love is not really love, and when I say I'm in love, it's much more like a drug than anything sane and reliable. Because all the decisions I make and all the logic and reasoning, when I look back at those moments of in love, I'm like, holy cow, girlfriend. You need to be suspicious of that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I love, again, like, I think we're our best research subjects. I mean, not to necessarily make decisions for everyone or say this is how it is, but to be able to say, wow, this is what I do. You know, let me look at that. Let me really see that. I'm so impressed by that. That's very cool. Well, we're also in the, you know, in the early days of love, in that lust phase. I mean, that's just, we're, you know, testosterone and estrogen are heightened. This is when we're, you know, in that kind of, we're just getting all of these reward chemicals, and they do seem to diminish the brain's capacity to function rationally at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a feel-good place, but to base our logic and our life planning from getting those hits, those highs, is really, I think, is dangerous.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things. I mean, one is to enjoy it. I mean, enjoy it if you're in it, but also know it's, you know, there are other places which are, and this is what, I mean, this is research I think that's been around for a while, that we go from lust to attraction to attachment. You know, that the long-term love doesn't have those highs that some people get really addicted to, and they never get a chance to really find what happens in attachment, which is where I think we're more in this calm. The hormones that are more activated are not the spiky ones that take us into these highs and lows and a kind of obsessiveness, but they're just the ones that make us want to be in our lover's arms because it feels like home.
Yeah, the word addiction came up for me. It's like I just flashed back of that time where I experimented with 30 men in 30 years, you know. It was just like, wow, what I call love and the thing that I long for, that feeling, those feelings of being wanted and all that stuff, it just really was more me being addicted to that. That feeling of power, that feeling of control, that feeling of being wanted, that feeling of being beautiful that I couldn't generate for myself. So I needed that to create that for myself.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I think that's what the addiction researchers would say is that, yep, it's a dopamine hit. You're getting, you know, you're getting happy chemical hits through this process of falling in love that is not. How do I want to hold it? I think it's beautiful. I think it's fun. It's like it's fun to go on a roller coaster. Why not? It's fun. I would not want to deny that from anyone in their experience. It's just that it's only part of the experience.
Right,
There's
and don't
more.
make life-changing decisions from there. Don't base that as a thing. Like, you know, I mean, like I noticed myself, like it goes up as a high and it feels so good, and then when he went away or, you know, they went away or whatever, I crashed, and it was like, God, this crash feels like a drug crash, you know, so I do see a lot of younger people who, well, I think it's anybody who's looking for love, they do base, is this my true love from that feeling high energy, and I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, and if you think about, you know, movies and TV, I mean, that's really what gets promoted to us, right?
Yep.
And it's, you know, God, who doesn't love a great romantic comedy where it just feels like so right, and oh my God, they found each other, and he you know, ran through the rainy streets to catch her. I mean, oh my goodness, you know, my mirror neurons are firing. I'm crying. I'm like, oh, I hope they meet each other. But you know, it's like that classic cartoon of Cinderella. You know, 2 years after she marries the prince, she's like going, wait a minute, hang on, is this what I signed up for?
That's right, yeah. So, hey, before we run out of time, my last and most important question was, like, I don't know if you had found anything, but, like, how come when I concentrate so much on work, I can't shift gear into sex?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and let's make some shit up. How does that sound?
Okay, good. It's a making your shit up time. We need a little radio, whatever, sound
signal. Like you need a little sound. Like we're making shit up now. Maybe a big fart noise.
About that. Why is it so difficult to shift into sex when our brain is so engaged on work or or something,
Or worry or something else, whatever we get preoccupied with. Well, a couple of things. And this is actually something I really wanted to talk about because I think it's really going to be helpful to women and possibly to men too. One is that I think that so if I think about the two sides of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, the left hemisphere is very focused on one thing at a time. It's focused on sort of logic and analysis, and all of this I'm sure you know, and probably most of the viewers know. The right brain is sort of permeable and interconnected, and to really have wonderful sex with someone, at least for me, I need to feel very permeable, like my walls are down and I'm really connected, and we're creating something magical together. Mm-hmm. And that's not generally the mode that I'm in as much when I'm working, when I'm writing a paper. I'm in focused mode. I'm probably more in my left brain, whereas sex requires me to be more in my right brain.
Yeah, it requires just surrendering all of that thinking.
Yeah, and language and analysis.
Right, and logic. Logic and analysis are just not sexy. Well, I say that, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, is this true? And I'm flashing by lots of fantasy about, a really logical man and all this stuff. But really, I don't think I can get it up. If their brain is so engaged in thinking through something, their dick is not hard.
If they are in bed with you going, oh, I see that now your nipples have aroused themselves 1 centimeter, I mean, that is not sexy, right?
Well, I don't know. That could be. I could really spin that one and make that sexy, yeah.
You can try out that fantasy with your boyfriend. We'll see how that works. You can report back.
Well,
that's great.
We all could play with that, right? So you're lying there and especially you have a new boy toy, can go, so I see that your skin is milky flesh.
That's poetic, though. That's right brain. That's beautiful. It kind of depends on the energy. The other thing, I think this is really interesting. I rarely quote, well, that's not true. I lied. Sorry, lies, I lied.
Right, it's a show on sex lies.
On lies, so I lied.
Somewhere.
I quote books all the time, and so here's my book for this show. It's a book called Bonk, B as in boy, O-N-K, by Mary Roach. Yeah. And it's about science and sex, and she's hilarious. She is so funny. She goes to a dildo factory. She, she tries everything herself, and she tells you about it.
Wow.
She's got a vaginal secretions meter, and she's telling you about it. She's great. So Bonk by Mary Roach. So there's a really interesting study in there that she talks about that this is what I make of it, that women who are more in touch with and more able to connect to the physiological response in their body, like more conscious and aware of it, are more orgasmic, more present to it. That
again.
Women
who
are more conscious and present to the physiological changes and response of their body are more able to achieve orgasm.
Wow. Yes. Wow.
Isn't that interesting? This is right brain stuff, because the signals from the body, from the heart and the gut and the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The rest of the senses of the body, there's something called the vagus nerve that comes right from the gut. Those all go into the right brain. They connect into the right hemisphere. So we get this interesting information from our body, but we don't have words for it. So a lot of times we ignore it. This is where a lot of our intuition comes in, and we have to help people put words around something so they can kind of understand it, help ourselves. Well, I think what I'm hearing in this study is that being, the ability to be turned on is somehow related to your ability to really know and be present to what's happening in your body, be connected with it.
Oh, honey, I have something to add to this piece of puzzle.
Yes.
Last night I was talking to a young man who was sharing with me that he has no problem getting himself off by himself, but when he's with someone, he can't do it. It doesn't work. And I said, do you watch porn a lot? And he goes, well, yeah, everybody does. And I remember reading something about this, and there's been some research where part of the outcome, the negative outcome of the Internet is that porn is so accessible now that men, and most people who watch porn are more men than women, are having a really hard time getting to orgasm really come because their porn has trained their sexuality, instead of being here, feeling their body, feeling their consciousness, being connected with their partner. They are more connected to that visual image of that fake woman, that fake scene, and so I'm just kind of sitting there going, ding, 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 ding in my head.
I love that. I think this is a whole area where there's just much more that needs to be done, but I think there's something really powerful, and one of the things that we can all do to be better in bed and have more pleasure is to, and you can do this whether you're having sex or not, it's to start tuning in more to what's happening in your body, sending your attention inside. Like if you're in traffic and you notice you're irritated, check in and say, what's my body telling me? What do I feel in my gut right now?
But I have to say, this feels a little bit like the yes and no thing, because watching porn is a lot easier, a lot lazier, you get off faster, quote unquote, right? Or reaching for that vibrator, it's much higher sensation, so it gets you off faster. And over time, we numb ourselves out, and we literally and physically, when we use the vibrator, you actually numb out the nerve endings of your clit even. So it's just kind of like, but that's where it's easy and it's yes, and the brain just want to go there, and to stay conscious and to really pay attention and to track and to touch and to spend time, that's a lot harder.
Yeah, it's the fast food society that you're pointing to, but when you have a really well-cooked meal and you take your time and you really enjoy it, man, it's amazing. And I think, it's the long-term, short-term, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's easier to do it the other way, but it's way less satisfying. Ultimately.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not advocating.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Right, but at the same time, I can just feel the difficulty, the challenge of that, because it's like you said, our brain is wired to go downhill rather than go uphill.
Yeah, to go with what's easy. Yeah, and to go with the short term and all of that. I mean, part of the problem is that our brain is wired to, be a little too left brain and not enough right brain. So, oh my goodness, well, we got to go, don't we? Because we could talk all afternoon.
I know, that's it. So, Anne, you want to say a few words on how they can find you or get contact with you?
I have a blog, which is yourcoachingbrain.wordpress.com, and I'm on Facebook as Ann Betts, and I put a lot of stuff out there about the brain, and please feel free to friend me. Those are probably the best ways to reach me, or through the Sex, Lies, and Consciousness website, and I, hopefully will be back in a few months to talk about something else really fun and sexy.
Anytime, Ann. I love talking with you. My brain get all titillated and...
You too, sweetie. I love this. This is a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you, honey.
I work with individuals and couples who are in crisis with their sex lives and connection. So you can find me and connect with me on Facebook. My fan page is Sex, Lies, and Consciousness, and my website is also Sex, Lies, and Consciousness. Let's see. Next week we have Eric Roselle, and we have two topics to talk about next week, which is really fun. I'm trying this for the first time. Eric is going to talk about sex and boundaries, all the boundaries that actually exist and persist around us, emotional boundaries, spiritual, physical, social, cultural, all this stuff. And when he talks about those, I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way. So I can't wait to dig around there with him. And then also my friend from Dubai, she's going to be on the show. I'm not saying her name because I'm not sure if she wants me to reveal her name. However, she is one of the sanest single women I know out there. Her perspective on marriage and dating and being single is quite refreshing, and I love to just keep championing her voice and her to really live life the way she wants. So she's going to be on the show talking about that. All right. Thank you so much for listening to my show, Exercising Consciousness, the voice of healthy sex. My ultimate goal is to help us get a hold of our sex, own it, play with it, and have power over it. Let it fully serve us and bring us joy and freedom. Talk to you next time. Namaste.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.